The moment I realized my husband was sleeping with my manicurist, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel betrayed. I smiled. Because in that exact second, I knew something he didn't. I knew I had already won. You see, most women discover infidelity too late. When emotions cloud judgment, when anger destroys strategy. But I've never been most women. I don't react. I calculate. I observe. I wait. And that's exactly why what happened next wasn't an accident. It was inevitable. I noticed it because of the way she smiled at me. Not warmly, not politely, not even professionally. It was something else entirely. A small, controlled smile that flickered across her lips when she thought I wasn't looking. But I always look. I've built my entire life on noticing the things other people miss. That's how I helped my husband build his business. That's how I became the quiet force behind everything he owns. And that's exactly why it terrified me when I realized something was off. It started as something small. It always does. My Thursday appointments had been a ritual for years. Same chair, same soft jazz in the background, same scent of acetone and lavender oil. And always, her, Lena. Delicate hands, perfect precision, the kind of calm voice that made you trust her without thinking twice. She knew everything about me, the shape of my nails, the pressure I liked, even the way I preferred silence over conversation after a long day. She also knew my husband, but that never seemed strange before. "Your husband picked a bold color last time," she said casually one afternoon as she brushed a deep crimson across my nails. I froze. "My husband doesn't come here," I replied, keeping my tone light. She didn't look up. "Oh, maybe I'm confusing him with someone else." That was the moment. Small, almost invisible. But something inside me shifted, because Lena never confused anything. From that day on, I started noticing more. The way she checked her phone more often when I mentioned his name. The way she avoided eye contact when I talked about his business. The way her hands, usually so steady, trembled just slightly when she worked on my left hand. And then there was the scent. One evening, my husband came home late. Again. That wasn't unusual. His company had been expanding rapidly, and I was the one who encouraged him to take risks, to grow, to become more. But that night, when he leaned in to kiss my cheek, I smelled it. Acetone and lavender, the exact same scent that clung to Lena's salon. "You've been working late?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, loosening his tie, not meeting my eyes. "Meetings. Investors. You know how it is?" I did know. I knew every detail of his schedule. I helped design it. And there had been no meetings that night. That was when the unease turned into something sharper, something colder. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I've never been the kind of woman who reacts without thinking. Emotion is a luxury. Strategy is survival. So I waited. I watched. And then, one afternoon, everything shattered. I wasn't supposed to be at the salon that day. My appointment had been moved to the following week, but I had some unexpected free time and decided to drop by, hoping Lena could squeeze me in. The bell above the door chimed softly as I stepped inside. The salon was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no chatter, just the faint hum of a ventilation fan. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I took a few steps forward, my heels clicking against the polished floor. And that's when I heard it. A laugh. His laugh, low, familiar, intimate. It came from the back room, the private treatment area Lena only used for special clients. My heart didn't race. It didn't break. It didn't do anything dramatic at all. It stilled. Completely. I moved closer, Each step measured, controlled, silent. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. Enough. Enough to see everything. Her hands weren't holding a nail file. They were on his chest. His shirt was unbuttoned. His head tilted toward her. The space between them non-existent. Comfortable. Practiced. Not new. Never new. For a second, just one, I wondered if I should make a sound. Slam the door. Scream. Cry. Become the kind of woman people expect in moments like this. But I didn't. Because in that instant, something far more powerful replaced the pain. Clarity. I quietly stepped back. My heels made no sound now. I left the salon the same way I entered. Calmly, invisibly, like a ghost slipping out of a life that no longer belonged to her. By the time I reached my car, my hands were steady. By the time I started the engine, my mind was already working, and by the time I drove away, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Because my husband didn't just betray me. He forgot who he married. He forgot that every contract he signed, every asset he owned, every success he claimed as his own, was built on foundations I designed, and most importantly, he forgot about the clause, the one buried deep in our marriage contract, the one he laughed about when he signed it, the one that said, "In the event of infidelity, I don't just walk away, I take everything." And this time, I wasn't just going to prove he cheated. I was going to destroy him so completely that even she would regret ever touching him. And the worst part? They still had no idea that I knew. The hardest part wasn't what I saw. It was pretending I hadn't seen anything at all. That evening, I cooked his favorite dinner. Not because I cared, but because routine is the most powerful disguise. Rosemary lamb, medium rare. A glass of red wine breathing on the table. Soft lighting. The illusion of a perfect life we had spent years building together. He walked in like nothing had changed. "Smells amazing," he said, kissing my temple. I smiled. "Long day?" I asked, watching him closely as he loosened his tie. "The usual, meetings, numbers." "Headaches," he replied with a tired chuckle. Lies had become so natural to him, they rolled off his tongue like truth. And for the first time, I realized just how long this had been going on. Because you don't lie that easily unless you've had practice. We sat across from each other, the table between us no longer a place of connection, but a battlefield. Every glance, every pause, every word. Data. I analyzed everything. The way he avoided his phone when I was looking. The way it lit up when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The subtle shift in his posture when a message came through. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked casually. He looked up too quickly. "No. Why?" I tilted my head toward his phone. "You seem popular tonight." He forced a smile. "Work." Of course it was. Work had become his favorite mistress long before Lena did. But unlike Lena, work had never smelled like lavender. That night, after he fell asleep, I didn't hesitate. His phone was face down on the nightstand. A small, careless mistake. The kind you make when you believe you're untouchable. I picked it up. Unlocked. He had never changed the password. Because he trusted me. Or worse, because he underestimated me. The messages weren't hidden. No secret apps, no coded language. Just her name. Lena. Simple, bold, reckless. I opened the thread. And there it was. Weeks. No, months of messages. Photos, voice notes, plans, jokes, intimacy that no longer belonged to me, conversations that revealed not just an affair, but a relationship. A real one. "I miss you already." Today wasn't enough. She suspects anything? Relax. She trusts me. That one made me pause. I reread it slowly. She trusts me. I almost laughed. Trust. Such a fragile, overrated concept. What fascinated me more wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the arrogance, the sheer careless confidence. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't afraid. He had already decided I was no longer a threat. And that was his first mistake. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger anymore. What I felt was something far more dangerous. Focus. I took screenshots. Every message, every photo, every timestamp. I sent them to a secure folder he didn't know existed. A folder tied to accounts he had never seen, never questioned, never imagined I would need. Because when we signed our marriage contract, I prepared for everything, including this. The clause wasn't simple. It wasn't just infidelity equals divorce. No, it was precise, strategic, ruthless. In the event of proven infidelity, I would gain controlling interest in any joint assets, including his company. At the time, he laughed. "Like I'd ever cheat on you?" he said, pulling me close. I smiled then too. Not because I believed him, but because I believed in preparation. The next morning, I made my first move. "I'm thinking of getting more involved in the business again," I said over breakfast, stirring my coffee slowly. He looked up surprised. "I thought you wanted to step back." "I did, but things change." He hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it, that flicker of discomfort. "Of course," he said finally. "It's your company too." Yes, it was. And soon, it would only be mine. But the deeper I dug, the more complicated everything became, because the financial records didn't match what I expected. There were transfers, small at first, then larger, money moving in ways that didn't align with the company's growth, accounts I didn't recognize, investments I hadn't approved. At first I thought it was carelessness, then I thought it was greed. But then I found something that made my stomach tighten for the first time since the salon. Payments. Regular, structured, hidden under operational expenses. And the recipient? Lena. Not as a person, as a business entity. A registered company I had never heard of. That's when the situation stopped being just an affair and became something else entirely. Something bigger. Something deliberate. That evening, I returned to the salon, not as a client, but as someone looking for answers. The bell chimed again as I stepped inside, and this time, Lena was alone. She looked up, and for a brief moment, I saw it. Fear. "Hi," I said softly, closing the door behind me. Her hands tightened slightly on the table. "You don't have an appointment today." "No," I replied, walking toward her slowly. "This isn't about my nails." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then I smiled, a calm, controlled smile, the same kind she gave me before. "I think," I said, tilting my head slightly, "we need to talk about my husband." Her face went pale, but she didn't deny it, and that told me everything. What I didn't expect was what she said next. "You don't understand," she whispered. I leaned closer. "Then explain it to me." Her eyes met mine, filled not with guilt, but something far more unsettling. Desperation. "This isn't what you think," she said, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt something shift, because suddenly, I wasn't sure who was playing who anymore. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. Desperation didn't suit Lena. She had always been composed, precise, untouchable in that quiet, elegant way that made people trust her without question. But now, her fingers trembled, her breathing uneven, her eyes searching mine not with arrogance, but with something dangerously close to fear. And that changed everything. "Start talking," I said calmly, taking a seat across from her as if we were about to discuss nail polish colors instead of the destruction of my marriage. She swallowed. "You think this is just an affair," she said, her voice low. "It's not." I let out a soft, humorless breath. "Then this is your chance to impress me." She hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any confession could, because whatever this was, it was bigger than both of us. "He didn't tell you anything, did he?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "That would require him to be honest." Her lips pressed together, then quietly, "He's using you." I didn't react, not outwardly, but inside, something shifted, sharp and immediate. "Careful," I said softly. "You're already in a very fragile position." "I know what it looks like," she rushed, leaning forward. "I know exactly what you saw, but you don't understand why." "Then enlighten me." Her hands clenched together. "That company you found, the payments, that's not mine." I went still. "You're registered as the owner," I said. "On paper," she whispered. "Yes." Silence filled the room again, but this time it was different, heavier, charged. "Who does it belong to?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know exactly. I was placed there." "Placed?" I repeated. Her eyes darted toward the back room, the same room where I had seen everything fall apart. "He approached me months ago," she said. "At first, it was just business. He said he needed someone with a clean record, someone who wouldn't attract attention. He offered me money. A lot of money." "And you agreed," I said flatly. I didn't have a choice. I studied her face carefully. People lie with words, but fear is almost impossible to fake. "And the affair?" I asked. Her expression broke slightly. "That wasn't part of the plan," she said quietly. I almost believed her. Almost. "Convenient," I murmured. "I didn't know about you," she added quickly. "Not at first. He never talked about you. And when I found out, it was too late." Too late. Such a simple phrase. Such a dangerous one. I leaned back slightly, crossing my legs, my mind already racing ahead, connecting pieces, rearranging everything I thought I understood. Because if she was telling the truth, then this wasn't just betrayal, it was a setup. "Why tell me now?" I asked. Her answer came instantly. "Because I think he's planning something bigger." That made me pause. "Bigger than what?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Something that will destroy both of us." The air in the room felt colder. "He's been moving money," she continued. "Not just through that company. There are others. I've seen documents, transfers, offshore accounts." I thought about the discrepancies I had found, the numbers that didn't add up, the patterns I couldn't explain, and suddenly, they started to make sense. "He's building something," she said, "or hiding something. I don't know which. But I know this." She looked directly at me. "If it collapses, it won't fall on him. It will fall on us." She didn't need to say it. I already understood. Because legally, the company was still partially mine. And if illegal activity was tied to it, I would be just as responsible. Maybe more. A slow, cold realization settled over me. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about cheating. This was about liability. And I had just become the perfect shield. I stood up slowly. Lena watched me, her expression unreadable now. "You expect me to trust you?" I asked. "No," she said immediately. "I expect you to survive." That almost made me smile. Almost. "Do you have proof?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Not here. But I can get it. Of course she could, because she was closer to him than anyone else, closer than I had been in months. The thought should have hurt. It didn't. Not anymore. Fine, I said. You help me, and I make sure you don't go down with him. Her eyes widened slightly. You can do that? I held her gaze steadily. Yes. Because unlike my husband, I didn't build things I couldn't control. And if there was one thing I knew how to do better than anyone, it was ending games I didn't start. I turned toward the door, then paused. One more thing, I said without looking back. Does he think you're loyal to him? Yes, she replied quietly. Good. I finally smiled. Let's keep it that way. As I stepped out of the salon, the world felt different, sharper, clearer, more dangerous. Because now I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband, I was dealing with a man who had carefully constructed a system designed to protect himself. At my expense. But what he didn't know, what neither of them fully understood yet, was that I had just gained something far more valuable than revenge. I had gained access to his secrets, to his plans, to his blind spots, and the most dangerous position in any war is the one your enemy doesn't see. But the real turning point didn't come from Lena. It came later that night. When I logged into a secondary financial archive I hadn't accessed in years, a backup system I created when we first started the company. Something even he didn't know existed anymore. At first, everything looked normal. Old records, early investments, growth projections. And then I found it. A file, hidden deep within layers of outdated data, recently modified. My pulse slowed, not faster, slower. Because instinctively, I knew. I opened it. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew collapsed. Because the largest account, the one all the money was quietly feeding into, the one connected to everything, wasn't in his name, wasn't in Lena's name, wasn't even under the company. It was under mine. Not recently created, not forged, not stolen, legally mine, signed, verified, years ago. My breath caught for the first time, because I remembered that signature. I remembered that document. I just never realized what it really was. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just a plan. It was a trap. One that had been set long before Lena. Long before the affair, maybe even long before our marriage. And the most terrifying part? I couldn't tell if I was the target or the architect who had simply forgotten her own design. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in years, I didn't trust my own past. I sat in my office, the soft glow of my laptop illuminating documents I had personally signed, structured, approved. Every page carried my logic, my language, my strategy. It was unmistakably mine. And yet, I had no memory of building this. The account was flawless, layered through legal shells, protected by clauses that anticipated investigation, liability, even internal betrayal. It was elegant, ruthless, invisible. It was something I would create, but not something I would forget. Unless it was never meant for me to remember. That thought stayed with me until morning. By the time my husband walked into the kitchen, adjusting his cufflinks like the world was still under his control, I had already made my decision. I wouldn't wait anymore. "Cancel your meetings today?" I said calmly, pouring coffee. He frowned. "I can't. I have—" "You can," I interrupted softly, sliding a folder across the table toward him. "Because if you don't, those meetings won't matter anymore." He looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in weeks. Slowly, he opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, bank transfers, messages, corporate links, Lena's name, his name, everything. His face didn't fall apart. That would have been too easy. Instead, something colder appeared. Calculation. "So," he said quietly, closing the folder. "You know." "I know enough," I replied. Silence stretched. Then, "How much do you think you understand?" he asked. I tilted my head slightly. "Enough to take everything from you." A pause. And then he laughed. Not nervously, not defensively, genuinely. That was the moment I realized I was still missing something. "You always did underestimate one thing," he said, leaning back in his chair. "And what's that?" "Timing." Something in my chest tightened, but I didn't show it. "Explain," I said. Instead of answering, he reached into his jacket and placed his phone on the table. Then he tapped the screen once. A notification appeared on my laptop. A system alert. From the account. My account. Access granted. Transfer initiated. My blood ran cold. "No," I whispered, immediately pulling the laptop closer. But it was already happening. Funds were moving, massive amounts, redirected, authorized, by me, or rather, by the version of me who created this system. "You see," he said quietly, watching me now with something almost like admiration, "you built something brilliant, truly. I mean that." My fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to override, to stop, to trace. Nothing. Every safeguard, every lock, every contingency was designed by me, which meant there was no back door. "You made it impossible for anyone to interfere," he continued. "Even you." I looked up at him. "What did you do?" "I finished what you started." The words hit harder than anything else, because deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. "You don't remember, do you?" he said. I didn't answer, because suddenly, fragments started surfacing. Late nights, discussions, ideas about risk, about protection, about building something untouchable in case everything collapsed, in case someone betrayed us, in case we needed to disappear. "We planned this," he said softly. "We?" I repeated. "Yes," he replied. "Before the company took off, before the investors, before everything became public." I shook my head slightly. "No, I would remember something like that." "You remembered the contract," he said. "But not this?" That silence was my answer. Because he was right. I remembered every clause that protected me from him, but I didn't remember the one that bound us together. "This account," he continued, gesturing toward my screen, "was never about cheating. It was never about Lena. She's just collateral." My jaw tightened. "Careful," I said quietly. "Oh, I am," he replied. "I've been careful this entire time. That's why I knew exactly when you'd start looking. Exactly when you'd find it." My mind raced. "You led me here." "Of course I did." The room felt smaller, colder, more dangerous than ever before. "Why?" I asked. And this time, his expression changed. Something darker, something real. "Because you were going to leave." The words landed heavy, final. "That's not—" "Don't," he cut in sharply. "Don't lie now, not after everything." I held his gaze. "And that justifies this?" "No," he said calmly. "This isn't about justification." Another notification flashed across my screen. Transfer complete? The account empty. Every cent gone. "And now," he said, standing slowly, adjusting his jacket like he had just closed a deal, You can't destroy me. I stood up too. You think this saves you? I know it does. You've just committed financial fraud on a scale you can't even control, I said, my voice steady despite the storm building inside me. He smiled slightly. No, he said. You did. Silence. Complete. Devastating. Because legally, he was right. The account was mine. The signatures were mine. The system, mine. You built the weapon, he said softly. I just pulled the trigger. For the first time, I felt it. Not fear, not anger, but something deeper. Loss of control. And he saw it. That flicker, that crack, that moment where I wasn't 10 steps ahead. You always needed to win, he said quietly. But this time, you forgot something important. And what's that? I asked. That I learned from you? The air between us felt like it might shatter. This was it. The breaking point. The moment where everything ended. Or everything changed. Because he thought this was over. He thought he had cornered me, destroyed my leverage, turned my own system against me. And for a brief second, it almost worked. But then, I exhaled, slowly, and smiled. A real smile. The kind that doesn't come from confidence, but from certainty. You're right, I said quietly. He frowned slightly. I did build this. I stepped closer. And I never build anything with just one layer. His expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. Because in that moment, he realized this wasn't over, not even close. The moment his expression changed, I knew I had him. Not fully, not completely, but enough. You always rush to the ending, I said softly, circling the table like we were no longer husband and wife, but two opponents standing on opposite sides of something far more dangerous than a marriage. That's your weakness. His jaw tightened slightly. And you overcomplicate everything. That's yours. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe I just plan further ahead. I turned my laptop toward him. Another screen, another system, one he had never seen before. For the first time since this began, he looked uncertain. You drained the account, I continued calmly. Yes, perfect execution. Clean. Efficient. Exactly how I would have done it. He didn't respond, because he was waiting. And that told me everything. You think that was the end of it, I said, tapping a single key. A new set of transactions appeared. Mirrored, layered, redirected. His eyes flickered, just for a second. There's always a shadow structure, I explained quietly. A reflection of the original system, built at the same time, hidden deeper, untouched unless... I paused, letting the silence stretch. Someone triggers the collapse. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice wasn't as steady anymore. Am I? I stepped closer. Tell me, I said softly. When you moved the money, did you check where it was going? A pause. That was enough. Because men like him, men who think they've won, they stop checking details. They followed the path you saw, I continued, because I needed you to see it. I needed you to believe you were in control. Another step closer. You didn't steal from me, I said quietly. You walked exactly where I wanted you to. His breathing changed, subtle, but real. And now, I finished, every transaction you just authorized, every movement, every account it passed through, I leaned in slightly, is tied to you. Silence, heavy, crushing. You said it yourself, I reminded him. I built the system. His voice dropped. What did you do? And there it was, the question I had been waiting for. I made sure, I said slowly, that if anyone ever tried to use it against me, I let the words land. They wouldn't survive it. His hand tightened slightly against the table. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "You would be implicated too." "No," I replied calmly, "because I never completed the final authorization." He froze. And in that moment, he understood. Everything. "You," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "I built the weapon." I held his gaze. But I never made it mine. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. "Legally," I continued, "I designed it. But I never activated ownership. That requires one final confirmation." I tilted my head slightly. "One that you just provided." His face went pale. Because now, the system recognized him, not me. Every transfer, every movement, every illegal shift of funds now belonged to him, not through manipulation, not through framing, but through his own actions. "You wanted control," I said quietly, "so I gave it to you." A long silence followed, the kind that changes people, the kind that ends things. "You planned this," he said finally. "No," I replied. "I prepared for it." And that was the truth. Because I didn't know he would betray me. I didn't know Lena would exist. I didn't know any of this would happen. But I knew one thing. People always reveal themselves eventually. And when they do, you either break or you let them walk straight into the consequences. He sank back into his chair slowly, defeated. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. "What happens now?" he asked. I looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt something. Not love, not anger, but something quieter, something final. "That depends," I said. "On what?" I picked up my coat. "On whether you're ready to tell the truth." I turned toward the door. "And whether I decide to let you. If you've made it this far, you already understand something most people don't. Revenge isn't loud, it isn't emotional, it's patient, precise, and sometimes it doesn't look like revenge at all. So, before I tell you what I did next, take a second. Ask yourself, what would you have done? Would you destroy him completely? Or walk away, knowing you already won? Let me know in the comments. And if you think you know how this ends, you don't. Because the truth is, I didn't go to the police. Not immediately. And I didn't forgive him either. What I did was something far more dangerous. I gave him a choice. Confession. Or silence. Freedom. Or ruin. And Lena, she kept her word. She brought me everything. Every document, every account, every secret he thought he buried. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. When I finally reviewed everything, when I saw the full picture, when every piece fell into place, I realized something I wasn't prepared for. This wasn't just his plan, and it wasn't just mine. There was a third name, buried deeper than all the others, watching, waiting, and somehow still untouched. So tell me, if you were me, would you stop here, or would you keep digging, even if the truth destroys everything that's left? Because I haven't decided yet, and that might be the most dangerous part of all.